This video is sponsored by Christoph Ray for excellent poly horror games. Check the link in the description below for some of his works. Change. It's a word we hear every day of our lives from birth to burial, but it's often a word we ignore, whether inadvertently or intentionally. Now, before I go any further, I'm not talking about change on a macro level. I'm talking about change on a micro level, more specifically, the personal side. Why am I talking about this? I feel like with a new year, specifically 2021, a lot of us have had to come to grips with various things, and the only way to push forward is to change. And this is a subject that, while we talk about ad nauseum, it's often the hardest thing to do is to change. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. First, I kind of want to just bring my perspective into this. I've had, over the past few months, a few realizations, not just changes to the project, which I talked about in our rebrand video, but also taking a hard look in the mirror at myself, having various conversations with myself and others, and coming to grips with a few things that need to be focused on, such as self-care, such as preventing burnout, which, as I've talked about in the past, was something I've done quite regularly and easily hit the worst burnout of my life around November, December of last year, and it showed. So having that hard look in the mirror and realizing there's certain things that I have to do for the betterment, not just for other people around me and a professional and personal, but for me, myself. Because at the end of the day, I have to live with myself. And it's not a bad thing to want change, nor is it a bad thing to consider change. But I think the hardest part is admitting to the point we have to change. Myself included, of course. I joke a lot that I grew up too fast when I was younger because from a military family, I had to move around a lot, I had to start over a lot. So change to me became kind of second nature for me. But as we get older, we develop these habits, and not just other people, myself included. And as we get into these habits and these mindsets and these ways of life, whether reflexive, intentional, or unintentional, we realize these certain things need to be corrected. They need to be rectified. They need to be changed. And that, I think, is why we as a collective species often balk at the concept of change. Not because it's a bad thing, but because it's scary to change. I think about a line from the Lord of the Rings extended version, an opening monologue by the late Ian Holm as Bilbo. And he often talks about, with hobbits, change comes slowly, if it comes at all. And I think that's the most prominent for a lot of us. I'm not saying the majority or over 50% or all of us. I'm saying for a chunk of us, though, change is scary. Not for bad reasons, but because, well, for some of it could be bad, but because it involves a lot of deep diving and taking a hard look at ourselves in the mirror. Because as I've said, we have to live with ourselves at the end of the day. At the end of a work day, work is done. Our friends are our friends, our relationships are our relationships, but how we change and handle ourselves will spread out and impact all of those that we directly and indirectly work with on a consistent basis, or even an inconsistent basis. And if we don't change ourselves, it's going to cause a myriad of repercussions, usually negative. Think of it almost like adapting to a situation. But eventually, we can't just keep adapting. We have to push forward. We have to break through that barrier. And that's where the scary part comes into play, because we are in this mindset. We are in this mode of thinking and feeling and acting. And it may work for us, or it may just be like a poultice on us, but it's that barrier, that shadow we cannot get past. And I feel like a lot of times that's kind of our security blanket. That's our safety zone, is we allow ourselves to act and feel and perform a certain way because it's safe for us. And that's not always a bad thing. But in a lot of cases, we have to break that barrier. We have to climb that ladder. We have to keep moving forward. The world is never going to stop spinning, and we're never going to stop moving. Even if we want to just plop ourselves down and just say, you know what, screw it all, I'm done. That's never going to happen. And I'm going to go into it in just a second. So, scariness. None of us like to be scared. Look, even us horror buffs that love horror video games and horror movies, while that's kind of our grim fascination, we don't like to be scared. Who does? I mean, honestly, who likes feeling like we are in danger? Who likes to be sent into sympathetic vagal mode, that is fight or flight mode, or dorsal vagal mode, playing dead mode? And trying to think now. And that's the same case with change. You know? None of us like having to look in the mirror and say, this is consistently bad, or I want to ascend to a new level, or I want to push forward with my career, or I want my relationship to grow and flourish. You know, that's all good saying that, but unless you act on your goals and your hopes, when's it going to happen? When is it going to happen? Here's kind of an anecdote for you. When I was younger, I was rifling through my parents' collection of knickknacks and trinkets they'd gathered on their travels. And there was this weird little head thing without pupils. And I asked my dad about it, and it was called a Daruma doll. And what that is when you have a dream or a hope or a goal, you paint the left pupil. And when the dream or the goal is achieved, you paint the right pupil. However, by doing that alone does not constitute the fact that you're going to achieve it. You have to work for it. You have to push for it. That means pushing your boundaries, pushing your comfort zone to get to that point. Nothing in life is going to just drop in your lap. We are not that fortunate. We are not that blessed. We have to work constantly to get to where we need to be. Yes, we will get a few handouts here and there through various means and whatnot, but it's not consistent. The only consistency in life is that it's constantly in a state of flux, and we have to move with that state of flux to stay with it or even ahead of it. So, by setting a goal or setting a hope or setting a desire, that's admitting to the fact you want to change. However, that's only the tip of the iceberg. It's a lot deeper than that. We have to set guidelines, short-term and long-term, to get to that goal. It can't just be, I want to get promoted in work, or I like this person, or I want to build a better friendship base, or I want to excel in this certain field, or this career path, or this educational format. It means finding out why. It means finding out how. It means finding out what makes it tick, what makes us tick, what achieves our desires for said thing. And only then, when we come to understand why and how, can we truly say, this is a goal that I want to pursue, and here's the guidelines to achieve it. Or realizing, maybe that's not the thing. And that's change in itself, is putting a goal or an initial goal or initial hope to the wayside, thinking, not now, I'm going to broach it later. But we have to look inside ourselves to decide what that goal is, what that hope is, what that dream is. And it also often means confronting ourselves from whatever angle it is, from an emotional standpoint to certain things that we need to overcome to get to that goal. And I think a lot of things that also cause us to balk at change is, I refer to this in previous episodes and interludes and whatnot, it's called hyperbolic discounting. And hyperbolic discounting is a psychological term used when a person's short-term thinking outweighs the long-term thinking. Our short-term goals are better than our long-term goals. And there actually was a study, I'll see if I can find the link, but if you want to find out for yourself, Boy in a Band on YouTube did this with, I want to say it's his consistency video. I could be wrong, but I believe that's where it is. There was a study done where children were offered one marshmallow, but if they waited that 15-minute period, without touching the marshmallow, without eating it, or without snacking or even nomming on it, they would get 2 marshmallows. And the overall consistency, or the overall result was that a sizable chunk, once again, I didn't look at the study in depth, that the short-term thinking was that I'm just going to have this marshmallow now because it tastes good, because I'm hungry, doesn't matter. I don't care about the long-term gain. And that kind of hyperbolic discounting impacts us, whether subtly or massively. And I feel like a lot of us, myself included, take hyperbolic discounting into effect like as a stopgap, a poultice, I can't do this right now, so I'm going to focus on this instead, which is all well and good. But if our long-term goals are to change, the hyperbolic discounting has to go out the window. We can use it as a stepping stone, but we have to curb it. We have to embrace what we are hoping to achieve. And that's the scary part, is breaking out of that comfort zone and trying to get to where we need to be. It was scary for me to rebrand the project because it meant so many different things I had to alter. Not just from gameplay or to interludes or to goals, but this overall arcing concept of what I want to achieve for the project. And after talking and just banding stuff around, I realized, yeah, this is something, it's going to take some time, it's going to take some effort, but overall, it's going to be a good thing. So I made the choice to change. The same case goes with me coming to grips with burning myself out, my anxiety, and my depression, and other things that have a negative outcome on myself and in turn others around me. And realizing I want to change, and then taking the steps to achieve it, such as, reading various books, taking certain exercises, taking time for self-care, taking time to realize, hang on a second, taking a moment to stop and think and breathe and center before forging ahead. And that is a big change in itself, is just taking a moment to stop and collect yourself. Now, these are just personal examples of what I'm trying to convey, but what it comes down to is change is all around us. And if we want to change, the first step is to look within ourselves. That's all it is. It's not going to be the end-all be-all, but by looking at ourselves hard and thoughtfully and quietly and parsing through what needs to be changed, whether it's a goal, whether it's a bad habit that needs to be done away with, whether it's integrating our positive sides with our dark side, whether it's doing shadow work, whether it's self-care. There's so many different things. But we have to stop, and we have to think, and we have to look, and we have to listen. And I've said this on numerous cases too in previous episodes. The word listen has the exact same letters as the word silent. Simple, yes, and it's one thing for me to be just expositing all this information out of my personal sides of things, but if this reaches out to one person and help them kind of think for a second, I want to do this, or I need to do this, and building that action plan. There was something I read a while ago, it's called a mind map. It's where we discover the mind mapping is originally used for discovering issues of the negative nature and then finding out what it impacts around us. So the root of the mind map could be, I react. Just throwing that out there. And then what it impacts. So I react. Goes over here, impacts family. Goes over here, impacts there we go. Impacts professionalism. How does it impact our professionalism? My colleagues get mad at me. Customers don't like me. On the familial side, people stop trusting me or they stop talking to me. So it creates this overall web that we can kind of do a backward study that goes back to the root of the problem. And by identifying how these impacts are, we can get to the root of what it is. And the same thing can be said for positive and proactive change. The change could be, I want to change my career, or I want to be a better partner, or I want to be a better child, or I want to have kids, or anything like that. Pick a goal and then branch off these little webs to what it's going to be impacting. Whether it's making more money, and from making more money, it's to buy a house or to get a new computer or to, get a new car. There's a myriad of things, or other side effects like this will help support myself, or this will grant me more freedom, or this will grant me more serenity, or this will help me, that kind of thing. And developing that web, it helps us take steps. So even if change is scary, by having these small stepping stones to get to that overall end game, we can tick off those things on the web. And it helps us on a more unconscious level and also holds us accountable. And that's another aspect of change that's so scary, is we have to be accountable for what we do. And a lot of people don't like accountability for obvious reasons. We don't want to be responsible if something goes tits up. We don't want to be responsible if we hurt somebody, or we don't want to be responsible if we hurt ourselves. We can easily pass the buck on or delegate or whatever it is. And by changing or wanting to change, that immediately throws the accountability in our corner. But if we don't do it, we're going to be stuck in a rut. We are going to stagnate and we are going to plateau. Now, maybe whatever I'm saying isn't making sense to people. Maybe I'm just rambling. I couldn't tell you. It makes sense in my head, makes sense on my notes, and that's what I'm going to stick with. But in conclusion of this rambling little interlude, it comes down to one thing. We have to make the best of the situation. We can be given a million different hands of cards or 2 or 3 hands of cards. But unless we take the hand and we fold it or we play it out, there's no chance in hell we're going to be able to progress. So hopefully what I said maybe offers a modicum of insight in how I think and how I feel, and maybe it will do some good for y'all. I don't know. But either way, I'd love to hear your comments. And I look forward to doing more of these interludes. I've got a few other ideas in the back of my mind. But if you have topics you want to see in the interludes, let me know as well. Once again, as I said in the rebranding video, my goal is to do at least 1 interlude a month. So otherwise, with that being said, I'm not going to give my shout outs, so you know who they are, what they are. Links are in the description below. And I hope y'all have a fantastic evening. And always remember, keep your fires burning.